Okay, sorry. Okay, so first we will start with inviting our other expert speaker because it's required that, of course, we look at the impact of all of these supply issues on fleet as well. So I would love to invite Michael on stage, who was so nice to share his view on the challenges that you have, because I think for you, life hasn't become easier the last 2 years as well. So up to you, Michael.
Thank you, Johan. I hope you can hear me well, and I hope that you will see the screen right now. So, thank you again. Thanks for having me today. I want to share a little bit of the perspective of someone who is responsible for a benefit car fleet like Microsoft. So the title of my presentation is huge. In other words, oh my gosh, Michael, how can we deal with all of that? So before we start, let me do two definitions of terms. One is opportunism, and the other one is partnership. And why I'm sharing that, you will see in the course of my presentation. So, but I think it's important to keep that in mind. First, a little bit about Microsoft. I think most of the people in the room will know our company. Um, and just a couple of facts. Microsoft has been founded in 1975. Our headquarters is in Redmond in Washington. We have subsidiaries in more than 110 countries in the world. We have more than 180,000 employees as of June last year. So meanwhile, I think we are still growing. And the revenue in last fiscal year, which ended in June on June 30th last year, was 168 billion US dollars. Something about the Microsoft car fleet. So we are operating 9,600 and a bit cars across the globe in 47 countries. The main share of the fleet sits in Europe, followed by LATAM, CE, MEA, and the Asia region. Our team, so we are a team of 4 people. We belong to the HR benefit organization. We are managing roughly 7,800 cars in 20 defined markets, mainly in Western Europe and Eastern Europe. And the target of the Microsoft Corporation is to be CO2 emission negative by 2030. So for car, that means we are not going to have any car with combustion engines in the fleet by that year. Since not all of you will know me, a little bit about myself. I'm born 1964, I joined the industry in 1993, so roughly 30 years nearly. I worked for several leasing and fleet management companies during that time, and so I know the remarketing space a little bit from the inside, but it's been a while. But still, of course, I'm confronted with the effects of what you guys do every day. Within the team, I have the accountability of managing 10 countries, the 3 German-speaking countries in 7 countries in Eastern Europe. I'm managing our preferred fleet management company across 20 countries. I'm the central point of contact for the global relationship management with the OEM, and I'm maintaining our global reporting. I implemented the first CO2 reduction in 2009 already, and since then, our emission averages went down from more than 200 to below 100. You've seen the numbers in the previous slides in the managed countries. So we're at 93 right now. It's not too bad. So I'm a big fan of data, being responsible for the fleet data in our team. So what I'm sharing here is the new car deliveries for the global Microsoft fleet from 2019 to 2021. And you can clearly see how it's developing. The positives I've highlighted a little bit. So we've seen significant number of plug-in hybrids in the last calendar year, and we've seen that a huge average also is already in the EV space. So it already is visible that our fleet is heading towards the CO2 neutral targets. But you can also see here in the graph that things are not easy. And so I drilled down to quarters on the right-hand side. And to be even more specific, I went down to the first 3 months of this year. Still, EV is um, even in March, meanwhile, the car or the powertrain with the highest share, which is quite remarkable. Um, but we are struggling, of course, with the usual problems. So we have delivery lead times up to 24 months. Um, we had multiple changes in during the production cycle of ordered cars. So multiple times the car manufacturer or the dealer came to us and say, we need to modify this and that because we can't build it. We don't have parts anymore, blah, blah. You know all of that. So cars have not been buildable, and even cars which have been completed have been stopped for whatever reason. And we have a special situation in Germany with tax rules, and they changed in January this year. So we were required to cancel existing orders, although the car was there. They just couldn't be delivered in time. So these are just a few samples of what we've experienced over the recent months. So what are our learnings? I think important is that it really you need to completely that you need to communicate completely transparent. It doesn't make any sense to hide anything towards anyone because no one has an interest in delaying the delivery of an ordered car. Not the car manufacturer, not the lease company, not the dealer, not us, not the employee, no one. We just need to deal with that situation. That means we need to actively engage with all parties involved, and we need to get a good understanding of the problems we have. Get and work with data, for me, the most obvious, but we're having a lot of data, we are using a lot of data. That helps a lot to really make educated decisions and not only rely on gut feelings or assumptions or whatever. Yeah. So that is really important that you really know how many cars on order, what is the delivery lead time, etc. Okay. Um, One of the very common recommendations is to add additional OEMs to the list of choice. We realized it doesn't solve the problem. It would be an opportunistic approach from our side. What we don't want and what we want to avoid, and therefore we don't do it. We stick to partnership. Um, what we do is that we introduce other forms of mobility, and I've heard it in one of the previous sessions. The trend towards other mobility means, and I think that is an important element what we should not underestimate. And it will change the world a little bit, and more. We are just accelerating more than what we have thought because it helps us that people select other means of transport instead of a car. Where it was possible and where it was applicable, we've built our own carpools to avoid the need of getting rental cars, which we don't get because of lack of rental cars. We extend lease contracts, but not as a standard rule, only where it is feasible and where it makes sense, and even sometimes case by case. Yeah. We allow employees to move into cash allowances. Um, the whole um, pandemic situation is, it has some advantages because we are having cars with very low mileages, so they are easy to extend. We are having people who have realized, well, we don't need a car anymore. So we could work with these elements and shift around a couple of cars that works. a couple of cars, not the whole fleet. One important thing is that one size fits all doesn't work, and certainly not on international level. So every country, every market has its own rules, and therefore um, we haven't found anything what we can apply in each and every country, which is okay. It would be nice if we have one strategy, but we can deal with 20 strategy as well. That's fine. And needless to say, you need to involve the relevant stakeholders early. Yeah. You've seen or you remember the two terms I mentioned in the beginning. Partnership. It's for us not just a word, it's really a commitment, but a commitment which goes in both directions. When the pandemic started in the first year, and you might recall the 2021 numbers and the 2020 numbers especially, um, we didn't stop ordering. We just continued ordering. And we had one of the best years ever in terms of numbers because we got the cars we wanted in time, sometimes even ahead of time because others stopped it. So we gave the OEMs the confidence that we are a reliable partner and they can trust and work with us. That's what I mean in both directions. On the opposite, I expect that the OEM now doesn't say, okay, well, there are groups of customers where I don't need to grant the discounts I'm granting to you. So I'm still expecting from an OEM to deliver on what we've agreed upon. Um, Shortages appear in different ways and can change on a daily basis. It is really important to stay very close to such delivery lead time and to frequent updates. It is extra work, but it's work worth to do because again, yeah, data helps you. Um, we realized that one option changed, modified, left out really can make the difference because it can be the differentiator between car can be built or can't be built. Pretty simple. Um, you need to watch very closely the role of mobility suppliers like rental car companies, and I come to that in a minute. But here, just want to say shortage has a complete new dimension there. For them, it's unbelievable, unbelievable what's really happening here. Um, we have to be creative. Really, everything which is possible or even impossible must be on the table and must be discussed to really get things out of the dirt. Yeah. Also, the employees need, of course, to accept limitations. They can deal with it, but only if you communicate in a transparent fashion. That's really a must have. And needless to say, also from a car policy perspective, it is needed that you update where this is required. So the future of our fleet, again, partnership. The OEMs must prove themselves to be a reliable partner. And we are going to remove those who play this opportunistic game. We will open up for more alternative mobility options. And we will, of course, continue the path towards emission-free car fleet. I'm not saying it has to be battery electric, could be hydrogen as well, but for now, I think it's more on the battery electric end of the range. And now I have some more thoughts where I don't have a slide for you, but just a couple of thoughts, which I've taken out of my crystal ball because I have something like that as well, which tells me the future. And in my perspective, the usage will become more relevant than ownership. And it doesn't really matter if we're talking by ownership of purchasing, financing, leasing, whatever, it's not relevant. Usage is the term. That means that we are going to see significantly less cars on the second-hand market because people just don't buy these cars anymore. Mobility providers, which are currently known as rental car companies, will be the most powerful buyers of the future. Right now, Many of the OEMs are pushing them back because of low margin business, but OEM will need them to survive in the future since private and business purchases will shrink, in my view. So the mobility providers, they will be clever. Yeah, they will use kind of a cascaded business model in the future. So first 6 to 12 months, they are going to rent or share the car. Yeah, then they're going to start subscription models for used cars, 12 to 24 months, I don't know. And finally, they will hand over for very low cost the cars to, I don't know, an Uber, a Lyft, or whatever company like this for X months. And then those rare cars will go to the market. And still, there will be the demand. So, mobility providers will not only be the major purchasers, major buyers of cars, they will also be the major sellers of the car in the future. That is at least what tells me my crystal ball. And on now with the presentation. At the end, you see live the partnership and be prepared to whatever comes next. And one more slide. Don't know if you can imagine what that is. That is a snapshot taken 2 days ago, because this is the most obvious next, which is coming its way. And according to the experts, everything what we've seen so far in terms of shortages, delay in logistics, etc., is kindergarten compared to what is coming here. What you see is the snapshot of the harbor of Shanghai, which is the biggest harbor on on the planet, and every little colorful dot here is a ship which is waiting to be either loaded or unloaded um, in that harbor. And they can't do it because it's closed because of the pandemic. No one knows how long it will take, the closure, and no one knows how long it will take until this bubble of colorful elements will be sorted out. So I think we really need to deal with that, because once this little crowd of colorful ants will start moving again, they will move into the direction of Europe. So 30, 40 days later, these ships will arrive here, or maybe 60 days. And then we have the next problem in Europe. In between, of course, there will be the next shortage, the next supply, whatever cable issue we are seeing. So yeah, unfortunately, this is not crystal ball. This is real. And with that, I hope I'm in time, Johan.
No
Thanks for
problem.
your attention and your interest. In case of any questions, please feel to reach out. And yeah, thanks, Johan, for inviting me and giving me the chance to talk a little bit. I hope it was
No, I think it
useful.
was good because I think the voice of the impact for you, I think, is quite important, and for the whole industry. There, I have just one question, maybe because I saw the potential on cash allowance there.
Mhm.
Do you think that in general, maybe in the fleet, this last year and a half, 2 years, will move more and more companies to think about mobility budget cash allowance so that their fleet, certainly the user chooser fleet or a management of fleet, gradually goes down into other areas like a mobility budget cash allowance?
Yes and no. um, I think the f- the funny thing is that in the years before the pandemic, everyone was excited about new mobility means and anything you can imagine. And then the pandemic kicked in. People are required to travel using public transport and that. And I said, oh no, that doesn't feel good. I want the
Yeah.
car back. So we've seen really a shift into that. People wanted to have the car back. And in parallel, of course, the development of mobility budgets and subscription models and anything you can imagine continues. Yeah, and just last year we opened up two mobility options in Germany. One is a mobility budget, indeed. One is a subscription model, because we have the cash allowance already. So that is, you need to test it. It is dependent market from market, and we are getting experience now. Um, I well, I was talking about the crystal ball. I must say it's extremely foggy in that sense. So I would not predict anything in the moment because we don't
Yeah,
know really what the next problem will be it the war in Ukraine, what I've just shared on Shanghai, the shortages and so on. So um, yeah, it's extremely difficult to
yeah, I
predict
understand.
anything. But we just need to be prepared. I mean, I mentioned that. Yeah, you need to be prepared for what's next. That includes exploring other mobility options. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you that in these times probably it makes it clear who is your real partners, huh? Who
Mm.
is really your a partner who can help you, even if it's a lease company or an OEM. For them, it isn't easy either, but then you will see probably who's really supporting to the utmost they can. So that's a cry maybe towards the supplier world that I can imagine.
I used the Fleet Europe event in Brussels last November,
Yeah,
the entire day to talk to OEMs only,
yeah,
just
yeah.
because of that. Yeah, and yeah,
Okay, Michael, thanks a lot for sharing, and hope to see you at one of the other conference upcoming, or the global one, or the Fleet Europe Summit in November. Thanks a lot, Michael,
absolutely.
and see you.
Thank you,
Thank
Johan.
you.
Thank you. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Bye.